Hey, we're back with another video. Now today we're going to be reacting to Ben Shapiro. He's going to be debating abortion. Alright, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Let's hop right into it. Let's get it, let's go. No time to waste. Oh, it's already on. I keep doing that. Alright, let's go.
Hi Ben, thank you for coming. I just wanted to ask, what is your view on the fact that bans on abortion do lead to about a 21% increase in pregnancy-related deaths when you hold that your views on abortion and abortion bans are based in the fact that you have a desire to protect life and save lives because every human being is made in God's image?
Because I think we're going to have a fundamental disconnect here. The entire abortion debate is centered on whether indeed an unborn child or a human life with potential is in fact that, or if it is just a ball of cells. If you believe that there is inherent value to a fetus, then I am seeking to preserve that life as well as the life of the mother. If you look at the raw numbers in terms of, for example, in the United States, 1 million abortions a year, let's assume that laws banning abortion in the United States were universal, those 1 million abortions go away tomorrow. That's an effective law, the abortions go away, but there's also a concomitant increase in the number of women who are seeking back alley abortions, for example. There's a concomitant increase in the number of women who are dying in pregnancy-related childbirth. That would not be 1 million. That would be a lot lower than 1 million, because 1 million women out of 1 million women, that would suggest that 1 million abortions would, if brought to term, 1 million of those women would die. That's obviously not true. So for me, an abortion prevented is a life saved. And you have to weigh that against what you're talking about, which is the life of the mother when it comes to a pregnancy. Now, even as a fan of pro-life position, and I'm a deeply pro-life person, I still have an exception for the life of the mother. So if the life of the mother is endangered by a pregnancy, then abortion would be legal. That's true for every pro-lifer in the United States, by the way, including the most pro-life people, including me. So, you know, I think that in order to make the argument that you're making, you would have to assume that there is no cost to abortion remaining legal in terms of lives lost.
Okay, so you're doing it on a utilitarian basis?
Well, I'm doing it on a lives saved basis, yes.
But yeah, so a utilitarian basis,
sure.
Right. So then if you look at comprehensive sex education, which the US does not have, a lot of people in rural areas don't have any form of sex education. You yourself have said, and I quote, on a general level, I don't think that teachers should be talking about sex in the classroom with kids at all at any age. It's shown that comprehensive and correct sex education reduces rates of abortion and teen pregnancy. So then if your goal is to save lives, why do you not support comprehensive sex education?
Because
it seems
Before he answers the question, I'm curious to know this too. Like, why is it that you want more? Like, let's say like 1 million abortions stops. We had 1 million children born. That'd be 1 million extra people to be in the U.S. We need people here. That's why like people have been talking about immigration, but that's not in there. 1 million people here. What would you do for the people who have babies who go get abortions because they can't afford those children? Would you incentivize the children? Would you put more money into welfare programs and things like that? The things that also he goes against. That's the argument on the abortion side of the right that I don't understand. And the argument on the abortion side of the left that I don't understand is they don't believe in the death penalty, but they believe in abortions. I don't know. It's weird. It's like a huge contradiction amongst. And I know that like people can argue that, but it's still like a contradiction on both sides. But it's still a great conversation.
like your goal is something else.
No, because these first of all, I would like to see the studies that you're citing in support of that
that study
idea.
is the University of Washington.
Okay,
study.
and there are plenty of other studies in the United States that suggest essentially no difference in, for example, unwed pregnancy in the United States.
Can I have those studies?
What can you have them? You can look at the pregnancy rates in California, New York, Massachusetts.
I just gave you my reference.
I mean, I'm happy to email you references if you so.
Hey, I'm doing reactions, babe.
Hey guys.
Hey, Mama Bear called. This is a good one too. This is on abortion. You might like this one.
Okay, like we going with your car, right? Yeah, we can.
Are you at the shop?
I'm not gonna put jacket on this pop.
You at the shop?
Yeah. Babe, react.
Oh shit. Yeah, my fault. Okay, yeah, my bad.
Yesterday you did the and you had a whole conversation with me at the end. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, I ain't even edit it out. Like that's how real I be. See, I be real. But people like that kind of stuff, man. I'm telling you. But I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah. Give it a minute.
I mean, this does happen to be this does happen to be a topic where there is social science on both sides. I'm not saying that the study that you're citing is invalid. I'm just suggesting that there is a difference in.
Keep in mind, she cited her source and he didn't cite his. I think that's the funniest part. Hold on, I'm not saying I'm against Ben Shapiro. I know how y'all be acting. I'm not saying I'm against Ben Shapiro, but I definitely am saying he didn't cite his source and she cited hers.
That's what I be doing, but I be scared sometimes.
Data methods, and I'm suggesting that the single motherhood rates in the West with comprehensive sex education are miles higher than they were in, say, the 1950s when there was not comprehensive sex education. So obviously that is not militated against the amount of unwed pregnancy happening in society. So the idea that the cure-all here is comprehensive sex ed, if you could prove to me, let's put it this way, if you could prove to me that comprehensive sex ed did result in lower levels of abortion, lower levels of unwed pregnancy, and that it was values neutral, comprehensive sex ed, in the sense that what it was actually teaching is, here is how to prevent a pregnancy without ending it in abortion, then I actually don't have a huge problem with that. It depends on the age at which you're teaching kids. There are other issues that I have with comprehensive sex ed, including the fact that what is taught is not the simple biology of sex and how to prevent a pregnancy. Comprehensive sex ed simply goes a lot further than that, and I have serious moral problems with that.
What? That's all you learn about in sex ed. You learn about like the diseases, you learn about like what happens with it, but at the same time, the main thing you learn about is the fact that pregnancy can come out of it. Yeah, like I don't think sex education was as good as it should have been in elementary school, and I think many people could agree with that, contest to that. But what is his contrived with learning about sex education? That's always been my issue. But I do think they're afraid that if we teach one side of it, we got to teach the other side of it. You got to teach homosexuality as well. But maybe that should all be taught, so we all have an understanding and we're less afraid of it. You know what I mean? I mean, y'all can jump in the comment section and debate me on that. I know, but it is what it is.
Want to get another one?
It seems like you're just trying to force women into motherhood, not save lives.
And I mean, just to respond briefly to that, I'm confused as to the very language of forcing women into motherhood suggests that in a vast majority of cases in which women get pregnant, they had no part in the actual pregnancy-making act, which is not true. I've done nothing. When you get, if you or any of your friends get pregnant, that is generally not having anything to do with me per se. So I'm confused as to why I would want you to force anything. Gotta tell you, it's been a very stressful period. Been traveling a lot. It's hard for me to get my fruits and veggies. I don't like the veggies all that much to begin with. This is why I've been relying on balance of nature.
Sorry, Ben. I gotta skip this.
When cars are coming and my car,
I like you a lot, but I gotta skip this.
I'd be like waiting a little bit or a
Hold on.
while.
Okay.
You ain't gonna hit me.
Promo code Shapiro, GoodRanchers.com. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered.
Thank you so much for your time. My question is...
I don't like how she ended that, though. She walked away by saying that, but at the same time, it does kind of sound like that's what the right wants. The right wants to force women to have children. The question is, if you're going to force women to have children, how are we going to incentivize them? We're the richest country in the world, and we don't have, like, incentive... We have welfare programs, but they're not good. We need better ones. If houses in China cost $10,000... what is going on in America if we're the wealthiest nation in the world? I'm confused. If we export... You know what? I don't know why... Never mind. I'm going too far off. We're talking about abortion. Let's keep going.
Sort of going back to the topic of Israel and Palestine, and specifically focus on Resolution 242. And just to give a context to the audience, like what Resolution 242 is. So in 1967, the United Nations passed Resolution 242, and this legislation requested that Israelite armed forces retreated from the territories occupied during the recent conflict.
From territories occupied,
yes,
not territories.
Yes.
It's actually a real distinction in the law.
Yes,
it makes a big difference.
Territories. Yeah, sorry. And it also stressed the importance of resolving the refugee issue justly, and also encouraged the end of the belligerency claims in states. However, the resolution did not explicitly state which territories Israel had to withdraw from because of the ambiguities in the language of the English version versus the French version. And this ambiguity kind of...
So the confusion between the Israel, like the Israel state, was that the language was French? That's interesting.
Is being used as a resolution, by the Israelites to justify its continued occupation of some territories. And furthermore, although the resolution mentioned a just resolution for the refugee issue, it failed to clearly address the right of the Palestinian people to statehood And from my understanding, that is the reason why a lot of the Arab nations sort of reject the resolution. So my question for you is, if you were in their shoe, if you're a Palestinian, aware that there's impreciseness within the resolution that will potentially put your people in disadvantage, how would you respond to that, and whether you will accept the partisan deal or will you reject it? And before you answer, I'm ready to be destroyed by Ben Shapiro.
So, I mean, the answer, if I were a Palestinian citizen, which fortunately I'm not because it's horrible to live under the Palestinian Authority or Islamic Jihad or Hamas, but if I were, I hope that what I would be doing is pressing for a full-scale attempt at a peace deal that would involve a two-state solution. The biggest problem with the two-state solution right now is that one side wishes to exist and the other side wishes it not to, and that's a serious problem. So if that were to alleviate, there's been heavy movement for decades in Israel for ceding territory, which is why Yasser Arafat was in charge of areas of the West Bank, which is why the Gaza Strip, which was completely ceded to the Palestinians in 2005. Israel removed 8,000 Jews from the Gaza Strip in 2005. They did not have internal military presence in the Gaza Strip, which is why they didn't actually have any intelligence as to what was going on October 7th. And so the obvious answer would be that if a Palestinian government were to arise that were trustworthy and credible in its pledges not to actually attack and use their new state as a base for attack, and that would require time and trust, and that would have to be built up over time given the amount of distrust in the region, which would allow for presumably gradually increasing control of borders with, say, Jordan, right? If you're talking about the West Bank, it would also require land swaps. I mean, all these things have been discussed by Israel before. They were proposed in 2008 by Ehud Olmert. Mahmoud Abbas literally got up and walked away from the table without a counteroffer. Yeah. So when it comes to the practicality of solution, that rests on whether the Palestinians are willing to have a government at any point that would actually make that peace deal. And it was interesting. I was at Oxford last night, the other university. I was there last night, and student after student got up and asked about this, and then I asked them a simple question. They kept talking about occupied Palestine. I said, what do you mean by occupied Palestine? And invariably to a man or woman, each one of them said, everything. Like from the river all the way to the sea, that's occupied. Well, you can't make peace on that basis,
of course,
obviously. So, as far as whether Israel's been willing to do it, yes, Israel will be willing to do that. But again, that's going to take time and it's going to take credibility. That's what Oslo was supposed to do, and it never even came remotely close to achieving that credibility, largely because Yasser Arafat is one of the worst people who has ever lived and an arch terrorist.
So what would be sort of your solution to that? What would you propose if you're the one that's mitigating the deal between Israel and Palestine?
I mean, right now there's no deal to be actually mediated between
just
the
in
two
the
parties.
Hypothetical
in the magical hypothetical deal, it would end up looking like the Palestinian areas that are currently governed by that are currently largely Palestinian would end up under Palestinian control. It would look like land swaps, probably, where the Israeli areas outside the Green Line, like Afra, which has 30,000 citizens living out there, that was not going to end up in Palestinian control. You're going to have a land swap somewhere else. I mean, that's everybody sort of acknowledges that is the way that it would go. Even Likud, which started off anti-Oslo, once that was the reality on the ground, started to embrace a lot of the language of the two-state solution. So, again, I think that everyone in the West is trying to jump to the solution without recognizing the failure of the premise. If you have two parties who are willing to make a deal is available. And if you only have one party who's willing to make a deal is not available. Right now, only one party is willing to make a deal. The other party has shown itself repeatedly, literally for all of Israeli history, unwilling to make a deal. There has not been a single deal accepted by the Palestinian Arabs or by their predecessors. When I say their predecessors, I mean the Arabs who were in Palestine didn't consider themselves nationally Palestinian at the time. People were Syrian, people were Turkish. The Peel Commission in 1937 recommended a significantly smaller state of Israel. The Jews accepted it, the Arabs rejected it. This happened over and over and over. 37, 48, happened again in 2000, happened again in 2008. Like over and over and over and over. So, again, it all comes back to the same point. Once there's a peace partner, you can talk. Until there's a peace partner, there's no talks.
Thank you so much. I feel being destroyed for that. Thank you.
I don't disagree with anything he said. To be honest, I don't disagree with anything he said. I think that could be a solution. I think definitely a solution needs to be discussed. But I had no quarrel with anything he just said. All right. Hopefully that actually recorded. Hey, all right. Peace. Oh, there it goes. All right, peace.